Etsy doesn't care about their sellers. They only care about their buyers, in my view. Now, in my opinion, Etsy is one of the greatest e-commerce sites that is out there right now. However, the people that are running it don't care about their sellers and are tearing the site apart. And before we get started, by the way, remember to like and subscribe and also comment as to what you think the problem is with Etsy and your own experience, because I would love to hear them. As I was saying, Etsy still is a fantastic site to promote your items and to promote your business. You will be able to make money on Etsy. I almost, guarantee you that. However, with the high fees that Etsy is now charging, people have been protesting this earlier on in 2022, and people have even been shutting down their shops because of these extremely high fees. They have had enough. These fees have grown exponentially over the past 5 years or so. And not only are the fees high, but there have also been other problems on Etsy as well, like suspensions and shutdowns. This goes pretty much without saying that there have been a bunch of shutdowns and suspensions on Etsy for virtually no reason at all. I mean, there have been, million-dollar companies on Etsy. People have been raising, $1 million in revenue on their site, and they've been shut down for virtually no reason whatsoever. Etsy can just wave their magic wand and just ban you for whatever reason. And I'm really sick of Etsy and them doing this themselves. So Etsy takes note of all the violations that you have selling on their platform, and if you have enough of those violations, you will be suspended forever, and you will not be able to go back on the platform and sell your items. I think this is one of the worst parts about Etsy, is that they just have this 3, 4, 5 strike policy. Even if you're doing nothing wrong, people, your competitors can actually target you and can shut your shop down on Etsy. And that is completely wrong. And Etsy, in my view, does not do enough to combat this. They don't do enough for the sellers to prevent things like this from going on. They're competitors. Your competitor yourself, if you're selling on Etsy, can shut you down just based on, because they don't like you, and they can report violations and things like that on the platform. Etsy, by doing this, Etsy has been taking people's livelihoods away. People rely on Etsy for food, for their kids' colleges, their children's expenses. People need to pay bills. And in my view, by doing this, by taking away people's ability to sell on the platform, it's just horrendously bad for people to be suspended and for them not to be able to sell on Etsy anymore because of a silly violation or something that's happened on the platform, or something silly has happened, like a competitor has messed with them on purpose to try to get them shut down. And this happens a lot more often than you think it does on the platform. I've seen a bunch of videos and a bunch of people in tears explaining that they've been shut down after having a six-figure income on Etsy. There are a ton of videos that you could check out on YouTube that have these stories. And I really feel for these people, because Etsy is something that people rely on as a job, as their only income. Something else that I find absolutely atrocious about Etsy is that people are forced to pay for advertising fees, even if the item sells. People are actually forced to pay this fee if they want their item advertised. Etsy is forcing your hand, and meanwhile, Etsy didn't need to do this, because at one point, Etsy was actually paying for these advertising fees and they were not taking it out of the seller's pockets. And these fees are very, very high as it is. There's this, the seller fees. I think they have like a shipping fee or something. I mean, and now that they have this advertising fee on top of this, which you basically need if you want to even get your item shown off the site, you're being charged for that as well. These fees are costly. I mean, they get up to like 7% and possibly even more than that, just as a fee for you selling on the site. And it's getting to be ridiculous. And this is why people have been shutting their shops down and protesting over this. Another thing that people hate, including myself, about this platform is that you cannot call them. You can't call Etsy if you are a seller. The only thing you can do basically is request a call, and good luck doing that. It's very difficult to request a call from Etsy. They make it virtually impossible to contact them if there's a problem, and you're going to have issues. You might have serious questions about the platform and serious concerns potentially. eBay, Amazon, credit to them. They are able to just take your phone call, and they're much bigger than Etsy at this point. I think that's one of those things where Etsy really does need to take note that they are doing a very big disservice to sellers. Their entire business model is relied on sellers selling their products on Etsy, and not being able to call them is effing ridiculous. Another point that I'm trying to make here, and I've been trying to convey to you guys and ladies out there, is that Etsy doesn't care about their sellers. They only care about their buyers, in my view. They really don't. I think that one of their, Etsy's mindset is, well, once we ban one other, seller that's causing us a problem, even though the problem could just be nothing, they always side with the buyers virtually all of the time. Their service is to the buyer, and the buyer could take advantage if they knew that Etsy is pretty much always favoring them, and if there's a case open, then they almost always get their money back from Etsy, which is something they don't want you to know. Even if they open a case and even if the seller is correct, they would actually refund the buyers themselves just to keep the buyers happy. And the buyers could take advantage of this. I'm not saying every single time a case is open, the buyer's incorrect. Absolutely not. There are many times that the buyer absolutely is correct in a lot of circumstances. If a item is arrived damaged and the seller refuses to give them their money back, things like that, I totally get it. But regardless, it's still completely unfair and unfavorable to the seller a lot of the time. And Etsy actually does force returns many times. If there's a item that arrives completely as described in the pictures, then Etsy on some case, and this has happened to me, and it's disgusting that they've done this, is that when I sold an item and it arrived in perfect condition, nothing wrong with it at all. The buyer was just unhappy with the way the item looked, and so they wanted a return. And I said, no, first of all, you don't have to take returns on Etsy. That's not the thing you have to do. And so I have a very clear no return policy. Of course, I always take returns if there's a serious problem. If there's a problem with, the item itself, if they receive the wrong item, if an item returns, is damaged, 100% of the time, no questions asked, I take a return. But if an item, like this item, for instance, arrived in perfect condition, nothing wrong with it, same as the description, same as the pictures, Etsy sided with the buyer. Ridiculous. When you get to a point when you sell an item and it arrives in perfect condition, and Etsy's like, well, you know what, we want to do it anyway. We want to return, give the item back anyway. And they also, on top of that, don't even care if the seller, or the buyer, I should say, returns the item to you. Basically, I got an email that said, you know what, just, we're not responsible if the buyer does not return the item. Forcing me to give their money back to them and not caring whether or not the item is even returned. Okay. I want to say, though, in conclusion, through all my salty nature about Etsy, I really do believe that Etsy is still one of, if not the best e-commerce platforms. Through all their issues and all their problems, I do understand that Etsy is a business. They do have to make money, and they do have to, appeal to buyers, and they do have to, in my opinion, they definitely have to appeal to sellers as well, and they have not done a good enough job of doing that. What I would say is open your own website. That's rule number one. Open your own website, collect emails from, the Etsy buyers that you receive every single time you make a sale, and a bunch of other things that you could check out in previous videos that I've done about Etsy if you are a seller. Again, in conclusion, I really do hope this changes. I really do hope that Etsy does see this video and just kind of, takes something out of this. I hope you take something out of this as well. Again, Etsy is one of the best e-commerce platforms out there to sell your products. but they can be better. They can appeal to sellers a lot more, to do more for the seller. Like this video for more, and remember to subscribe also, because I have so much more to say about Etsy, and a bunch of other good things to say about Etsy, because I've done a previous video that all I've done is saying great things about the platform. And so again, what do you guys think? Just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, everyone.